half of us that make over 100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. Half of us in the country. And
Supal, it's good to have you back on the show again. That last call, we talked a lot about financial advising and the basics there. But as we were having more conversations, we kind of realized there's a missing piece there. We talk a lot about making more money, but we haven't really talked a lot about like managing the money. One thing we realize is that a lot of people, they keep the same habits even when they make more money. So I really wanted you to kind of hop in and talk about, cash flow management and really workplace retirement again. But before that, you might give like a quick introduction to who you are for people who haven't seen you on the show yet.
well, Clarissa Lee, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. My name is Supal Vora, and I'm a private wealth advisor with Navina Wealth. We're a private wealth advisory firm with Ameriprise Financial. And I've been in practice for the last 20 years. And what I do is I educate and empower people to make smarter financial decisions.
All right, that sounds good. That's good. Yeah. So let's hop in. Let's hop in. Let's talk about cash flow management. Like what? Let's define that for people. What is cash flow management?
Well, once we go ahead and start earning money, we oftentimes think that our primary impediment towards being financially successful is making money. But one of the things that we realize is that once we start making money, we have to have some habits created that allow us to manage our cash flow and be able to save it. Some of us, we are hardwired to be just absolute geniuses at cash flow management. We may be that, or we know people in our family that are that way. We all have that aunt that can stash away money. We all may have a sibling that's just absolutely brilliant about just putting money aside, even if they're not making much, or we may be that. But
Right.
for those of us that are not, we have to create some cash flow management habits or systems that, in spite of us, even as we're making money, we're able to set money aside for our future.
Would you say that those habits require a lot of practice to kind of change previous behavior or
It depends on how aware we are. I
okay.
read this study once that only 16% of us are actually self-aware. But
Wow.
when asked, 85% of us actually say that we are self-aware. So if we want to make it really simple and we're smart and humble enough to recognize that this is an area that we are weak in, then
Wow.
Right.
all I recommend doing is taking a couple of simple steps that, in spite of ourselves, we can save. The first mistake that we all tend to make is that we have our income coming into our bank account. From that bank account, we pay all of our bills, and then whatever is left over, we save. So what happens is that when we're making money, we see a lot more money coming into our bank account. Just magically, our bills go up. We don't know how it happened, but they just
Right.
magically go up.
Right.
And then we are left over with the same amount of savings, or maybe no savings like we were before we were making the money. And then we
Right.
scratch our head and we go, what happened? Why is this happening? And the reason why is that when we see the money come in, we are hardwired to spend that money. So, one habit change that I think is really important to make is pay ourselves a paycheck first. So, if we are a business owner or a tech employee, an entrepreneur, and suddenly we were making, let's say, $50,000 a year, now we're making 75,000 a year, for example, we have an extra 25,000. Give ourselves a pay raise and live off of 60,000 a year.
Right.
And rather than having your direct deposit come into the account that you're spending money out of, instead have your direct deposit go into a separate account. And then from that account, pay yourself into the account that you're paying your bills in.
Hmm.
By just making that simple manual change, when suddenly you see your pay spiking, you'll not automatically increase your expenditure at the same amount because you're manually increasing your pay by a desired amount of your choosing. This is really good for those of us that live like rock stars or homeless people, business owners. Sometimes we make a lot of money and then we go broke for a while. And then what happened is we accidentally spent our money during the time that we were making a lot. And then we have nothing left when we're broke. So by going ahead and putting us on a fixed, when that prince or pauper type of income fluctuation happens, we can manage that.
Yeah.
Or if we're used to making 50, 60,000 a year, we suddenly start making 100. Well, we're not going to go spend it all and go buy an expensive truck, for example, and then
Right.
we're instead going to redirect that money towards our investments and growth. And that's what that habit switch will do on cash flow management. Simple change.
So I hear the listeners, they're like, man, but what if like I just don't have enough money to cash flow or like manage, and like there are things I really need to actually increase my expenses. Like maybe people who are not eating well now and they want to be able to increase, change that. Maybe they want to make some kind of habit change to work
Yeah.
in their lives.
That
How do
that that
you
is for
manage
sure. And sometimes, and what I say is that in order for us to have cash flow management and to put this in place, we don't need to have a lot of income. But at the end of the day, we all know that we probably cannot spend more than we make. We can
Right.
probably at least attest to that we should not do that.
Right.
But what we do know is that what we spend does not come in equal monthly increments, that our annual spending always comes divided by 12. What
Right.
happens now, once in a while, our car is going to break down and we're going to need to get it fixed. It's going to cost us $300. Then we're going to have to go to a birthday. We're going to need to pay for that. Then
Right.
Christmas is going to come by. Then there's going to be the big trip that we've always wanted to do, that we promised everyone we're going to go. And now it comes time to pay for it.
Right.
Well, those type of expenses happen all the time. Plus the ones that we know that we don't expect, but different types of expenses happen unexpectedly throughout the year.
Right.
Those are what we call non-recurring expenses that occur on a recurring basis annually.
Ah,
If we know we're going to have that, but we don't make money in that type of fashion, then at least every month we should be saving that amount, because we know we're going to come due. Now, here's
Mm.
what really happens to most of us is we live month to month in our monthly paycheck. So we pat ourselves on the back. We go, great, I did not spend more than I made. Fantastic, great job. And then comes that car bill and we don't have the money, so we put it on our credit card.
Right.
Then comes that big trip that we had to pay for and we forgot to save for it. So then comes that credit card. So what do? That big tax return that we were going to get, that was going to get our savings going, is now going towards paying off these credit card bills.
Yep.
And then we start that process all over again. So it always
Yeah.
feels like we're
Yeah.
barely keeping our head over water, and it makes us feel uncomfortable. If
Yeah.
it made us feel so comfortable, we wouldn't be listening to this right now.
no.
Yeah. And we're guilty of that in the past.
I better take some notes.
Seriously, not planning for it, knowing it's coming, and then, oh, we'll just put it on a credit card. Oh, when we get our taxes, we'll pay it. Well, by the time taxes come, you got to pay about 5 or 6 creditors, and you still
Exactly.
don't have it paid off. And
Yeah,
so
the worst thing too is making plans with money that you ain't got
you
yet.
don't even have
Like,
it yet.
you're assuming you're gonna get a tax return as well.
Exactly. So that habit that we make when we're making 30,000 a year is going to come in handy when we're making 3 million a year. If we have to learn that habit when we're making 3 million a year, we're going to have accidentally spent a couple million on just all sorts of wasted expenses.
Oh, yes.
So there is nobody for whom cash flow management is not critical for. It's for all of us.
So it's not something that see, that's the thing. So it's for people who make a lot of money and for people who make a little bit. You still got to manage. Be faithful with a little bit, and
Yeah.
you can be faithful with a lot. We give them
Yep.
a lot.
You
And
mentioned
the simple exercise is just do a budget and
okay.
separate the expenses that happen every month. So what are expenses that happen every month? Our rent, our mortgage, our car payment. For example, we may have dining out expenses, groceries, children's expenses, all of those expenses that month in and month out. We got to pay the utilities, we got to pay the rent, we got to pay the mortgage. But then there are irregular expenses like soccer practice for our kids, car breaking down, the big trip that we're going to go on, that big wedding anniversary gift that we're going to get for our spouses. Those are the irregular ones that when it comes time, we go, I got to get this anyways. I can't have forgotten my anniversary. So we're going to go ahead and put it on our credit card. And so instead, what I say is that let's budget through and go, how much am I going to typically spend on Christmas every year? $500? Okay, let me write that down. How much am I going to spend on vacationing every year? $2,400? Well, I better start saving 200 a month every month so that
Right.
I'm not charging that 2,400 on my credit card.
Mm.
So if those and then every year, if we know something just mysteriously blows up and we got to spend $1,000 fixing it, then we should be saving $80 a month for that miscellaneous expense.
Miscellaneous. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if we're making 30,000 or 300,000. If we are responsible for paying bills, the first step we should do is do cash flow understanding and analysis. And doesn't mean we have to stick to it like glue, but once a year, we should just go through how much do I need to spend and how much do I make? And then in order to live within our means, we start monthly saving the expenses that we are paying for anyways that occur irregularly. Regular expenses that occur irregularly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like planning for CapEx.
Yeah, like capital expenditures you plan for, like having to replace a roof. when
Rest
you're gonna
20
get rid
years
of it.
out. You see,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
then
and that's where we all need to think like CEOs,
Mm.
right? And that is so critical that we have that entrepreneurial mindset in our own lives. Because why is it that we need to plan for that roof depreciating over 20 years? So that way, suddenly in 20 years, we got that big roof bill. We're not caught unprepared.
Yes.
Right. What? The roof gonna get repaired?
or increases in homeowners insurance. Those little,
Exactly.
because just a quick funny story. We had a situation with my grandmother, older woman, fixed income, and her homeowners insurance went up a couple months ago. And I mean, she was in a straight panic. She was like, I'm done. Like she literally thought her life was over, and it had only jumped up $300. It's because she
Yeah.
hadn't planned for it. She just was living in, well, what do I have to pay today? She's not thinking about the future. And not only that, as far as her roof, she's like, I'll handle it when it comes. I'll just have to put it on a credit card.
Yeah.
That is such a, what is it?
I mean, also a reactive way of handling things too.
But also, what is
Like
it?
passive.
It's a passive way of handling. Not only that, generational way, right?
Yeah, that kind of
It's
pass
a
it down.
generational way to handle it.
And that's how we are hardwired, is to always look at the crisis in front of that's in front of our face. But imagine if we're driving in a one-way lane and we get a chance that we find out that there's an 18-wheeler coming to us, but we only are going to find out when it's 5 feet away.
Right.
Or the other option is we find out the 18-wheeler is coming towards us, but we have a 1 mile ahead advance notice. Boy, how scary is that going to be? Not too scary.
That's
Not too bad.
Finally, we had to figure it out and how much of a reactive measure are we going to do? How much is it going to mess up our journey? Probably not much. But if we find out when it's 5 feet away, we're either going to be dead or in the ditch. And so these things that are going to happen anyways. We are not going to choose those events. They're going to happen. It's our degree of preparedness is our only choice that we have. So the further out in advance we know, the smaller the action we have to take. So if we naturally begin to always plan in advance, then our actions are always small and we're prepared when the events happen. So we just got to get into that habit. So right now we're in a habit of always being reactionary because we don't have enough time to be proactive because we're being reactionary for the crisis of the moment.
Yep.
So unwinding that to become proactive is not easy. That change is difficult. But once that habit change is made, then you're just taking a series of small steps, but you're ready every time a big event happens. It's so much easier. It takes less effort. So for much less effort than what we're already doing, we get a lot more for it. So it's not as if we're sacrificing anything. We're just becoming smarter, more efficient. But that cannot happen until we make that painful first transition. And what does that mean? It means we got to know how much we're making and how much we're spending. Then we have to know, okay, this is the damage I've accidentally created. I got to come up with a plan to fix that and clean up that damage.
Right.
Then we go back and go, now what is realistically possible given our time frame? For our kids, if they say, I want $1 million gazillion, and they're 5, it's possible. We don't have to do much. But if you say that today at 45, okay, it may not be possible. So the
Right.
plan allows for us to know what is possible.
Man, you're preaching today. You're preaching today. That's all I can really say.
So the workflow sheet that you have access to would kind of be, well, an evaluation with you, and then that first step, that sheet being filled out, will
Yeah.
kind of be first steps for someone who's looking to get their finances in order.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's where I think where a lot of us, for example, that are struggling around cash flow management, it can become a massive impediment for us to take action because we think we need to have money in order to make money. The reality is that we need to create the process to be able to save money in order to have money. And if we're struggling there, then we need a financial advisor. We need a CFO that's going to look at where the problem lies currently and come up with a solution and then motivate us along the way, be our coach.
Right.
This is where we need to expend the energy. Once we get over the hump, we'll then move on to the next thing. And for that, I and my team could come in and help to do a cash flow deep dive.
Right. For a lot of people I know, for us, years ago, it's embarrassing, when you look at the mess you've created. So I know that when we started working with you, that was initially a feeling that we had. It's like, oh God, he's going to look at us and say, they don't have any money. I don't want to work with them.
They broke.
They're broke. And so that wasn't, for our listeners out there, that wasn't it at all. We didn't have that, Supal didn't make us feel bad about bringing, the mess that we had made. He made us very comfortable with working towards cleaning that up, using that worksheet, and also giving suggestions on how we can increase our income, because it's going to be managing your money. Either you're going to be reducing your expenses or increasing your income to manage it.
Yeah. Thank you, Clarissa. My special niche is working with people that are in the conundrum where they have made the realization that I can make a high amount of income, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have debt problems. That doesn't mean that I don't need help in saving. Here's a statistic. Half of us that make over 100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. Half of us in the country. And that sounds crazy, but for those of us that are in that, we know that situation. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's my specialty is because I lived that journey as a financial advisor. Wow. What happened to me was that I was a financial advisor early in my career. Suddenly my income went up and I started making over 6 figures. But I was in my early 20s when this happened. So my job was to go ahead and help people who had money to grow their money. High income earners invest and grow. And suddenly I became one of those people that should have been on paper able to save a lot of money. But what I noticed is that suddenly, like a black hole, I was just spending money, buying things and doing things that I wanted to do when I was younger, that I thought that once I had money, I should be able to do all those things.
Right.
But it had a big cost towards my savings. And what I noticed is that, so then my next answer was, I'll just make more money. So I then doubled my income again, and the problem doubled. And I noticed that without a financial advisor helping me in creating a cash flow structure, that as a financial advisor, I was still doomed towards this cash flow problem. And I unfortunately fell into the half of us that have this problem. Half of us have this problem. So I, as an advisor, see people that make $3 million a year that struggle to save. And I have clients that make $50,000 a year that have no problem saving $10,000, $15,000 every year. And they're supporting themselves. There's no additional income. So some of us who just have it, pat ourselves on the back. Fantastic. You thank yourself for the gift that you have. But if we don't have it, know that until this is fixed, this will be a lifelong impediment. You'll just never get over that hump. Doesn't matter how much money you make. And you will come to that realization that you can't do this on your own. I would love to help you if you fall in that boat. And if you're not making that money yet and you're young, but you're smart enough to see that this could become an impediment to you, then I'd love to talk with you so we can help and create the right foundation early on.
And that's I mean, we're still figuring it out, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like just as much as these calls or these sessions are to for our listeners, that they're just as beneficial to us, right?
Yeah.
We have to remind ourselves that too. We think like, man, it's like everything's so expensive now, and everything costs so much more. How can I save more money? The economy keeps going up, and that's kind of what we're feeling right now. Actually, is like,
Yeah.
you feel like, man, like I want to save more, but I want to invest more, but I don't feel like I have enough. I need to make more money.
Yeah.
It's not enough. It's not enough. So
I think financial advising like keeps you on track, right? Like a
Yeah.
parent, almost like a parent, like a financial parent.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, do that. No, don't do that. Let's look at this.
Exactly.
And it's a constant reminder of the goals that you have and the path that you want to take. And it's a challenging path, but I think it's a path worth it.
And I think the coolest thing about financial planning is that it will forever ruin frivolous spending for you. Because whenever you go out and want to spend stupid, there will be a voice in the back of your head saying,
that's so true. That's so true.
put this money in, and this will be like 10 times as much in the future if I did in my Roth IRA. And should I really go buy a round for all those people? I don't know.
Supal, yesterday we were at the store to get new cell phones because we're like, oh, we want the new phone so we can record our videos and this and that. Oh, it'll only be $30 a month per phone. And we literally went to the store to get the new iPhones. Mind you, nothing's really wrong with our iPhones. It's just the fact that it's new and these phones are paid off. We're sitting in there, we're talking to the lady. She didn't even have the phones in the store. So we were going to have to order them online. When we left the store, I got in the car and I looked at Lee and I was like, do we really need those cell phones?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, not really. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be a no on the phones.
Yeah,
and we literally, that was the voice you were talking about because,
it's amazing when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I guess, you have your thing where like my struggle with that at times, I feel like, all right, man, I still want to have fun. Like I still do want to enjoy the hard work that I do.
Yes, I want to eat good.
Like, I want to eat good. I want to go on a vacation at some point.
And we want to do all of those things. So what I have found is that there are certain gifts that just keep on giving. So I have found for me, and I found for a lot of people, that the gift of seeing your wealth being created and passing it to the next generation is the gift that keeps on giving, because we get to invest money today. We get to see it grow. It gives us joy. Then it may go down, and then we see it grow even more a couple of years later. And so we feel joy again. Then that money comes in handy for our kids and different events in their life. So we feel joy again. And it's just a gift that keeps on giving. And an example for me is that, my wife and I, we saved a lot of money early on. That money we then took, we bought Apple stock with it. Apple stock grew. And then that money we took, and we felt a lot of joy when we bought a house with it. That house then grew. And now we have a home with a renter that pays us cash flow. And that all happened because I thought that, we buy all this Apple crap. Why not just buy Apple stock at the same time as we're buying this laptop? And that's how it all started. Now, the other side, the Apple laptop that I bought on the same day that I bought the Apple stock is literally on the shelf for the last 7 years, hasn't done anything because it's been outdated. While it gave me a lot of joy for the first year, it became outdated, the joy stopped. So if I hadn't done a split ticket purchase, and I had gotten even a better Apple laptop and not split it and bought that Apple stock, I wouldn't have had the gift that keeps on giving. I would have had the gift that turns worthless. So what happens with a lot of these treats and toys that we buy ourselves is that our joy diminishes really quickly. And that is another thing I found as a gift of financial planning, is that it'll show us the hollowness in a lot of those material things really quickly. And it'll show us the fulfillment in these gifts that keep on giving, the everlasting fulfillment of us just doing these things and watching our kids imitate it. We go, wow, I'm going to make sure my whole next generation is going to be rich as well. That's an everlasting joy that I found. So That's another thing that I think is a great thing when we start being open to the financial planning, is that it'll ruin certain things for us that we didn't think could be ruined, and it'll get us open to and enjoying things that we never thought we would enjoy. And I have found that truly travel is the one thing that we find priceless. The memories, the things that create memories more than the toys, because that we could never recreate that memory on our own. And so what I found is that for a lot of people, they want to be able to expand their horizons. So we go, instead of buying all these toys, let's save up some money for travel so you can go enrich yourself and get that experience.
That's good. You're in deep thought.
Yeah, man, you just got me thinking about a lot of things here. Yeah, I'm thinking about a lot.
Okay, so retire. We need to go into
So
retirement.
yeah, so we talked a little bit about cash flow, man. Any final thoughts on cash flow before we switch into the
No,
workplace?
I think we've covered a lot.
All
Okay.
right, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the workplace retirement now. Like, how these two connect?
So the one thing that I see us oftentimes missing out on is free money. We never want to say no to free money. Keep that in mind. Never, ever, 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 ever. So if those of us that work for an employer and have a W-2 job, the vast majority of us, even if we have a small to mid-sized employer, will have a 401k or some sort of workplace retirement plan available. If we work in a nonprofit, it'll be 403b. We want to take advantage of this because it's free money. Most of these businesses that have that workplace retirement plan will offer a match as an incentive for us to contribute. The most basic match is usually dollar for dollar, meaning 100% match for the first 3% of our contributions. Meaning that if we put in 3% of our pay, we will get an additional 3% of our pay matched for free. So that's an immediate 3% pay raise. So if we're making $50,000 a year and we put $1,500 in our 401k, that's another extra $1,500 match. So $1,500 from our paycheck would lead to $3,000 being invested. So we don't want to say no to free money. Now, the second thing is that the IRS, depending on our tax bracket, we can even choose to put it into a tax deductible 401k. So if we're in the 24% tax bracket, if we're in a state that has income taxes, we can go ahead and write off a third, even potentially, or less, sometimes more, depending on our tax bracket, of every dollar we put in. So that makes it even cheaper for us to save money. So for example, if we're in a 24% tax bracket and we put in $1,500, well, 24% of that $1,500 is coming back to us. So what that means is that it really only cost us $1,140 to get $3,000 invested, because we saved $360 in taxes by not having to pay taxes on that contribution. We then got a $1,500 match. So that's almost a tripling of our investment overnight. Then all that money grows tax deferred in that retirement account. So if there's one place, even if cash flow is tight, I always urge, we're going to get to that point at some point in life where we're not going to want to keep working. We're going to need to have some money for that. The most efficient way is to take advantage of the free money that our employer makes available to us via a match. So we don't want to miss out on that. We want to take advantage of that. And so that's where in your workplace retirement plan, even if your cash flow is tight, if you want to get your bang for your buck, take advantage of that match and contribute at least to that amount as a bare bones minimum.
Okay.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess and then doing that also takes some cash flow management to make sure that you're putting that money away. So then let me ask you this question then. So you're putting that money up for savings, but you can't. What happens if you need money for emergencies? Because I guess that's not necessarily liquid.
That money is not optimal for emergency funds. It's specifically designed for it to grow and multiply many times over many decades to save for retirement. So the IRS, they really don't want us to take this money out until we're in our 60s. In fact, if we take any money out before 59 and a half, they'll even penalize us.
Yeah.
So that's why cash flow management is critical. We need to have emergency funds. So we need to get to the point where we have at least 3 months of living expenses on hand. Keep in
Okay.
mind that half of America does not have it even $450. Half of us do not have that. So if suddenly
Wow.
2 tires go out and we go, "Boom, I gotta change my front and back tire," we would be in trouble. Half of us in America, in the richest country in the world, would be in trouble. So now we think about how much we go off and spend on coffee, right?
Mm.
Now, if we don't have enough money for that emergency fund, then that's something we're gonna have to suck it up. And we're gonna have to make some tough decisions and say that I've got to go ahead and make this a priority. Otherwise, I'm gonna get in the constant charging my credit cards and paying them off and charging them and paying them off. And to do that, we pay an exorbitant amount of interest that if we weren't doing that, we could save that interest cost and save it for our retirement future. So if we
Yeah.
just go through that one-time hump of creating the emergency fund, then rather than charging the credit card and paying it off and doing that cyclically, we're using our emergency fund and then we're replenishing it. We're using our emergency fund and then we're replenishing it. And that 25% in interest that we were now savings, our saving goes into our Roth IRA or a 401k and can grow for our future. But
Yeah.
that means that the one time that we have to go through that hump, we're going to have to suck it up. And easy opportunities to do that is when we have an income change. So if suddenly we went from 60,000 to 90,000, that's the perfect time to say, I'm going to build all these habits in place right now. Take that excess capital, pay off my debt, and then redivert that towards growth going forward. But what I have seen happen instead is that we'll take that and we'll reward ourselves and go out and buy that dream car instead. Go on that dream vacation and go travel business class when we shouldn't have done that.
Mm.
That's why the behavior has to be learned before you make the more money, because you're going to do the same exact thing.
And it gets worse because the debts you take on are even larger.
Yeah.
That's kind of something I said,
Yep.
like in the previous one, was that a lot of people are making, like I've seen, like even in the tech industry, they're making 6-figure income, and then they go to buy their dream car, a high-rise apartment, and they're in a worse circumstance than they were when they actually made less money, because they can at least
That's
qualify.
a great point, and I think that's a great way for us to tie in and wrap up.
Okay.
With answering that very first question that you had, is saying that how much practice do we need to do cash flow management? And so there's only three end outcomes. There's only three ways out of this for us folks if we're going to be successful. One is that we're one of the 50% that we just got it. We got this. We're fine. And if we're one of those 50%, well, hey, great. If not, I hope our spouse is, and that we can at least surrender to our spouse and recognize that this is their superpower. But if we don't have this strength, then we realize that either we're going to have to learn this the easy way by recognizing that this is a weakness now and build the systems in place, or we're going to recognize the hard way after we start making a lot more money, end up with more debt and go, oh my gosh, I got to clean this up. I'm feeling exhausted because I feel like I'm in the ocean paddling, keeping my head above water. And I keep making more and more, but I feel more and more weighed down. What's wrong with me? Those are the only three outcomes that we have if we're to be successful. So if we can be aware enough to know that we're likely not in that 50% that has this as a superpower, and we're probably not married to someone that has this as a superpower, or if we are, we're not going to surrender to them long enough, then working with a partner and a financial advisor is a great third party who can guide us to doing so. And I can help you on that.
Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you. Listen, like, this guy is great. Like, this is our financial advisor. Hopefully you all took some notes. And we're going to have him on the show again here to talk a lot about these different things that we all need to know. This stuff is so important, you all. So Supal, look, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And we will definitely put a link in the description. So people, if you want to reach out and talk to you, get a consultation, they can reach out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.